Hello, my name is Mike Tellerino. I'm the CEO and K9 for K9 for Veterans. Tonight we're here to discuss what the VA is not doing for our veterans. We have two guests with us tonight. Sitting next to me is Ernie Davis, Spec 5, United States Army, served a year in Vietnam. And next to Ernie is Carolina
Contreras.
Okay, thank you for that.
I'm a VSO with the American Legion.
Thank you. And what do you do for them?
I'm an advocate,
Okay.
so the VSO stands for Veteran Service Officer.
Okay. Well, we're here tonight to talk with Ernie about an incident that he had just last week when you called me and told me what was happening with the phone call that you had with the VA. Why don't you start out by giving us a detail of that event that night?
Well, I had problems with my heart, and I was given certain medications, and it caused bleeding inside my body. And I got up one morning and I felt real congested in the stomach and gassy. And I went to the washroom and blood just poured from my system. And I immediately got on the phone, called the VA, and they told me that a nurse would call me back and stuff. The nurse called me back. I explained that I was bleeding pretty heavily from inside my body, and could I go to the nearest hospital, which is walking distance from my house. And she said yes, but we didn't know if we can pay for it. She said, then asked me that I have a way to get to North Chicago, but first she told me that I couldn't drive, nor because I would cause danger to myself and to other drivers. So she asked me, did I have anybody that can take me? And I said, well, I live alone, I have my K9 dog, and not really. So then she said, well, call an ambulance and to bring you to the VA. And I said, well, from my experience with ambulances, you can suggest a hospital to go to, but they tell you that they have to take you to the nearest hospital, which had just happened maybe 3 weeks prior to that, when the VA called the ambulance to take me to the hospital for my heart, that I had a cold blue. Then I explained to her that I, didn't. Then she stated, then catch a Uber. And I said, well, I'm 20, 25, 30 miles from North Chicago, VA, and, I don't really have the money to pay for Uber and stuff. And they just kind of left it at that, Well, I got out of it, well, if you can't get in here, you can't get any treatment. I immediately thought about my back doctor that I was going to in Libertyville, and she had told me that after the 30th of September, I could no longer go through the program that they had that was sending me to her, and that I had to go directly through the VA to get all permission. I did experience a related incident with them when I had my cold blue on the medication that Lutheran General Hospital heart cardiologist gave me that I had to fight for.
Ernie, correct me if I'm wrong. So when you called there to get permission to go to the hospital, they told you you had to go approximately 25 miles away instead of going to a hospital that you could
Yes.
walk to, because you had no one to take you there, you were feeling that bad and
Yes.
poorly.
Yes.
And they told you that if you went to another hospital other than the one that in North Chicago, that there was a chance or they probably wouldn't pay for your services.
Correct.
So at that point, what'd you do?
I felt bad. I felt like they really didn't care. I immediately thought about a year ago when I experienced some problems that it wasn't no problem for me to do that. And with this new policy change, it's like I feel like, frankly, I felt like I was an animal, that they really didn't care about the condition.
I thought there was a new policy, and maybe you could correct me if I'm wrong, that veterans were authorized to go outside the VA for health care, and that the VA would pick up those benefits. But now, talking with you, you explained to me that there's regulations, rules, guidelines that you have to follow, and if you don't follow those guidelines, they're gonna not pay for it.
Unfortunately, I don't have all the information about all the policies. I know that
Right.
they did try to make changes to the choice program. They are out there, but I do not know
No,
much
but
about
I'm saying there was a policy written that veterans could go outside the VA on an emergency care situation, and it would be covered by the VA. But now they're telling them that, you know what, you're sick, you're not feeling good, you're dizzy, you're nauseated, you feel weak, you're by yourself, and now they expect you to drive 26 miles by yourself to get proper medical care, or any medical care, when you could walk to the hospital where he wanted to go to. I mean, how does that make any sense? How does the VA allow that to happen to our veterans? I mean, I just don't get it.
Mike, may I say something?
Yeah, please, that's what you're here for.
I was reaching out to a few veterans that I met when I was in the PTSD program, especially a friend of mine's named David. Him and his wife served in Iraq. And I was telling David about my situation, and then David told me that there is a policy, but it's 40 miles radius. He said because he experienced, like he's 39 miles from his VA, and he said when his wife have to go at 9 o'clock in the morning, he had to literally rent a hotel room to make the appointment because he's 1 mile from the VA. So the policy that they have is a 40-mile radius, which I really don't think is fair. I mean, it's not like I always reach out to the VA,
Let me say something here just to clear the record. First of all, our guest, Carolina, and I'm so sorry, she's an advocate for the veterans. The views that I'm expressing or that Ernie's expressing are our views and have nothing to do with her views at all. So I just want to make that clear. Okay. Go on anyway, what you're saying, I'm sorry.
And he had to get a hotel room for his wife to stay to make the appointment. And he said, well, and then he just asked me, he said, well, how do you think I feel, Ernie? I'm 1 mile out, outside the limit. And then we discussed well, all of a sudden it's a problem with us trying to get, treatment. All of a sudden. It's like you need permission more so now to get treatment, when last year, if I went into my primary care, which I have a history of back problems, she would say, well, okay, Ernie, I'll direct you to the choice program, and the choice program would call me and set up my appointment. And if I disliked a doctor I was going to, then they gave me the option to go to another doctor. So I feel like I don't have that option anymore. It's like either you do this or nothing. And that's my opinion of it. And
we've been going back and forth with the VA for years with this. This isn't anything new. I was on the internet, I was doing some research, And in January of 2014, CNN reported that 19 veterans died at a VA hospital in 2010 and 2011 because of delays in the diagnosis and treatment. How do we allow that to happen, Ernie? I mean, what's up with that? If we know what the problem is, how come we're not fixing it?
Because they don't care.
Yeah, but they know what the problem is, and I guess it just puzzles me is if you know what a problem is, you fix it. They tell you what the problems are right here, but no one is taking anything to move forward with getting these problems fixed. I don't get it. I really truly don't get it. That's just one, and then you had another one. At least 40 veterans died while waiting for appointments to see a doctor at the Phoenix Veterans Affairs Healthcare. The patients were on a secret list designed to hide lengthy delays from the VA officials in Washington, according to a recently retried VA doctor, several high-level sources. Now, they're falsifying records to hide the delay it's in time to get the veterans to see a doctor. Again, they have the problem, but they're not doing anything to fix it. I don't know if I'll ever understand that, you know. What do you think, what's your role with the VA? As, you know, with the American Legion Post, you're assigned to the VA, am I correct?
We have an office at the VA regional office in Chicago, but we are not part of the VA.
Right. You're an advocate.
Yes, we're a veteran service organization.
Okay.
So we can help veterans apply for VA benefits. We can give them guidance about what kind of benefits they may qualify for, and if there's other resources in the area that are available to them.
How much of a delay is there or a time lag is there if Ernie was to come in there and apply for, let's say he was recently discharged and he comes there and applies for VA benefits for medical care?
So it depends what benefit he's applying for.
Just healthcare.
For healthcare, the VA has different priority groups. So there's 8 different priority groups that the VA has. The 1 through 7 are mainly for people who are service connected for a certain condition. And the last group is based off of finances. So it depends on how much you make. If you make over a certain quantity for the area that you live in, you may not qualify for health care.
So the VA is putting a price on your health care, basically. Whether or not how much money you make determines on what kind of health care you get.
Not necessarily the health care, but if you're eligible. So a lot of veterans who are service connected, they are eligible for VA care regardless of income.
Mm-hmm. And how long does it take for a determination once you do apply? How long could it take? A month, 6 months?
So let's say for a veteran who had a back issue in service, he injured his back and wants to file a claim for disability for his back. If he has a documentation that it occurred in service, so if it's documented in his service treatment records, or if he has statements or statements from other people that the incident occurred, and he has a current diagnosis, then we could submit a claim for the back condition that occurred in service. Normally, on average, they're taking about 109 days to get service connected. It all depends on how long they've been out. Normally, for people who are still within their year of discharge, it's a lot easier to get their records than people who have been out for 20 years because they have to request their records through National Archives, and it may take longer for the VA to get those records.
So once they go through the process of applying for their benefits, you're saying it could take 109 days to get a letter of determination?
On average, yes.
If they're denied for any reason, what's their right to appeal, or is there a right to appeal?
Yes. So if they, once they get the notification letter that the VA sends out, they have a year from the date of that letter to do a reconsideration with new medical evidence or do an appeal.
And if it isn't within that year, if it's past a year?
If it's past a year, then they would have to do a claim to reopen the condition with new evidence, and it would have a different effective date. So let's say same person further back gets the denial letter last June and did no action whatsoever on the claim. If they go ahead with new evidence and come into our office and request to do a reopen with the new evidence, then it would have the effective date of whenever they come into the office or do the intent to file. So an intent to file is something that you tell the VA that you're going to submit a claim and you have a year from that intent to file date to
Right.
actually submit the letter. So let's say that veteran with the back condition comes in now and gets denied. He has a year from the date of the letter to do the appeal or reconsideration. Now, the appeal process is changing. There's the traditional route that right now is taking on average from 3 to 5 years. And they have created a new rapid appeals program that starts in February. So right now, if somebody submits an appeal or notice of disagreement, they can choose to do the RAMP, which is a Rapid Appeals Modernization Program. And the VA's goal is to try to get those done within 125 days. So they can choose the RAMP up until February, and then in February, the new RAMP or appeal.
So it's a streamlined process then? It's a streamlined process, the ramp appeal? It moves quicker?
Yes, their goal is to do it within 125 days. Now, some of them have, who have gone through the RAMP, have gotten their decisions before that time.
What would you, or what would you recommend to a veteran coming in for the first time to apply for benefits? Like he comes in and says, I'm here, I was discharged, and I want to file for a claim for medical.
The first thing is to go and talk to a VSO like myself or with another organization. They also have some state offices. So in Illinois, there's the IDVA, Illinois Department of Veterans Affairs. But the first thing is to go talk to a VSO. Tell them what it was, what kind of injury you have from service, what kind of documentation you've been getting, if you've been going to a doctor or not. It's also very important to do the intent to file. Either call the VA directly and tell them, I want to submit a claim for disability or pension, and then they will send out a letter. So at least that saves the date of claim for a year. So you have that year to gather all the evidence.
Now, what if somebody's terminally ill, or somebody's got a life-threatening illness?
There are...
I mean, what do they do then?
They will expedite a claim. So if they are terminally ill or hardship or homeless or a few other instances, they will expedite the claim.
Ernie, after this happened to you, you had to be just like devastated, I would think.
I was twofold for me. It's like, yes, the VA helped the homeless and the veterans that can't help themselves. But what about veterans like me that can help themselves, but will reach out to the VA and say, can you help me find an apartment? And I've done that, and you know what they tell me? Well, you're not homeless. So me and other veterans say, well, it's best for us to be homeless and full of drugs so we can get a home. Because that's like a priority thing for them, you know?
So you got to be homeless to get help. And believe me, they should get all the help they need.
You know, when I got my dog, and I at first I talked to you about the lady wouldn't let me keep my dog. I reached out, say, could you guys help me find a place for me and my dog? And they said that we only help the homeless.
So you're losing your place to live because you have a service dog. They didn't want you there anymore. You're not sure where you're going to go or how you're going to do it. You call the VA for assistance and they tell you, sorry, we only help the homeless.
Yeah,
but you're going to be homeless soon.
There are other resources. There are social workers at the hospital that have they're aware of different resources for veterans. So that's always something that can...
Yeah, but my thing is that if the VA is going to help veterans, and which they do, you know, and they helped my brother. He was into drugs. He was in the service. They got him a place, got him a job. Okay. unfortunately, I had a job, you see, and when I first went into the system with the VA, I had to pay co-pay, you know, and all of that stuff. Then later on, when my condition changed, and I was with the anxiety and all the rest of the stuff, and finally my PTSD thing came through and stuff, it was like I was booted to the side, you know? But I watched many veterans that was on drugs and on alcohol come through. I was in one building for PTSD, and they were in another building, and they made sure before they got out, they had a job, they had a home.
And that's great.
Yeah,
I mean, I think
that's
it's
super.
wonderful.
But what
the VA is
about-
doing. I mean,
That's great. But what about the veterans that are not on drugs, that are not alcoholics, that are struggling with PTSD and don't trust? I think we all should deserve the same treatment. You know, I'm not saying like they could base off my income, what I can pay for rent, and help me find a place. You know?
but they have to wait till you're homeless before they do that, is what you're saying.
Right.
What's your biggest complaint, one, for the medical treatment, that you haven't been receiving from the VA?
It's twofold. I've had good experience and bad experience with the VA. I had an operation at the VA that they had to redo. I was left in a room for the weekend, and I had to call a social worker on my cell phone to let them know, hey, I've been here 2 days, I ain't saw nobody. Okay, so you lose a lack of distrust. Okay, so I had a problem with my eyes. Okay, and I went to an outside doctor, and he said, well, you know, Ernie, we can fix this problem. So I called the VA, and I said, can I get permission to have this doctor fix my eyes? So they said, well, what's wrong with our doctors here? And I said, well, you have to excuse me, but I was there, and I had an operation, and they had to redo it. And I asked the doctor that told me it was wrong to do it, and he sent me back to the same doctor, okay, and stuff. So you have to excuse me if I lose trust for the doctors here.
What would you say your biggest issue is with veterans coming forward?
Coming forward for
For benefits, are they not bringing in the correct information, the necessary paperwork? How could they expedite coming in, meeting with you, getting their claim filed? What's the biggest issue that they're having when they come in for a claim?
For veterans who have been out for a long time, most of it is the care that they've received from discharge date until current day. So that's
Well,
what's important.
I'd like to thank both of you, my guests, for coming out today. Ernie, you know, I wish you luck with the VA, I really do. And thank God they have advocates like yourself helping with the American Legion, helping our veterans, because without them, they would be totally lost. Without you guys, would be totally lost. I mean, they wouldn't know what to do or where to go. So fortunately, you're out there protecting our veterans, and I'm sure Ernie would like to thank you for doing that.
Yeah, I
really.
really
I mean, it's
would.
an awesome job that you're doing. The American Legion, God bless them. They're an awesome organization.
Yes, they are.
They're out there helping our veterans every day. So thank you, Ernie. Thank you for your service, and hopefully we could do this or not have to do this again, I should say. Thank you, and good night.